Okay, so this is question one of my evaluation for my magazine. Um, First of all, talking about my conventions for my magazine. My magazine Static follows the basic forms of conventions of a real media product. So, although my initial plan was actually to produce a more indie and minimalistic style magazine, the more it developed through my research, I decided to stray away from the more risky minimalistic idea. And then on top of this, the examples of magazines that are similar to my genre of magazine, which would be like alternative rock, follows magazine conventions quite closely, such as NME and Q magazine. So now I'm going to talk about my house style. Um, Obviously, blue, white, and black are quite typical and conventional. And I felt this worked well visually and would attract my target audience. So that's the first thing that's quite conventional about my magazine. And then, of course, my artist's own house style features in the magazine so that fans of his would be more attracted to the magazine, and uh, it can work in symbiosis with the artist, which is also very conventional of these types of music magazines. They would work with the artist to try and attract the target audience, as well as the artist can benefit from it. The My cover image um, is a photo of my friend Tarek, and it's a full bleed front cover of the and he's portraying my fictional artist called FTL, and it's a close-up shot, which has been achieved through light manipulation and manual exposure. Um, this style of front cover is also quite conventional of music magazines, as seen also in Enemy and Q magazine and other magazines that I've tried to relate to and take inspiration from. Um, my masthead Static. My masthead Static. I stuck with this as I thought it was catchy and memorable and could give connotations of the sort of sound you might hear after a live performance. And I thought this would appeal to my target audience of alternative music enthusiasts. And the font and styling is also very conventional of most magazines, especially music magazines. The bold font and the very simplistic styling of it. The cell lines are also very typical of music magazines, like the um, the open-ended questions and the headlining artists that would attract the audiences. The main cell line that I use is just the artist's name with a accompanying freight cell line underneath it to give slightly more information. This is also very conventional, of course. Um, I included the price uh, on the side, and as well as a barcode, which is just very basic conventions of almost all magazines. Um, so moving on to the contents page. Um, this is also an example of how my magazine follows many conventions. For example, the features, regulars, and reviews section. These are all very basic things that you would see within a magazine, especially a music magazine, of course. Um, Furthermore, the image captions on top of my on top of the images of different artists is also very conventional, and that has been like taken from other magazines that I've taken inspiration from. Um, the largest image in my contents page is of my feature artist, which is another convention of music magazine contents pages, and the subscription information and social media information are more conventions that I've used. So moving on to the article. This is my article introduction. Um, this is the double page spread introduction, and I felt that I needed an introduction, um, just simply to make it a little bit more special. And I felt like I really wanted to use this image and give it a sort of big like double page like image that takes up 2 pages, which is again a convention, quite a common convention of a lot of music magazines, which I've seen in many Mojo magazine, music magazines, and as well as Clash, which is a magazine I took a lot of inspiration from. Um, Down in the article section, I use a pull quote here, which is again a convention that I've followed. Um, but however, one thing that does challenge conventions in this page or pages, as that I didn't include pull quotes on these images, and that is just because I I did want this page to be slightly more minimalistic and have more of a focus on the actual images itself rather than give too much information or have too much text on the page itself to make it all just a bit too busy looking. And I've also seen examples of this in the Clash magazine, music magazine, uh, as inspiration. Finally, for conventions, I included a poster, and this is to complement what I the cell line that I featured on my front cover. Oh, and this a freebie is another convention to try and attract audiences, which I've also included here, and I've included the actual poster itself at the end just because I thought um, it'd be good to include it and it would look nice, which is a quite a common convention of some music magazines, which I thought I should include. Okay, so this is for the representation of um, the representational issues within my magazine. So to start off, um, the social group my magazine is representing is young, artistic, and fans of alternative rock music. Um, so I'll start off by also saying that my magazine has a lack of representation of females, as I didn't include any photos anywhere within the magazine of that have any girls in it. I didn't do this on purpose. This just is the way that it came out, and it's something that I noticed after it was finished. Um, for my feature artist, FTL is the fictional feature artist of the magazine. Um, I feel he's represented as emotional, and I feel that there's multiple things that I've done to try and convey this, such as and these things they kind of have an effect of like peeling back the layers of his fame and make it him seem more relatable to the audience. So, for example, in this cover image here, there's quite it's quite soft lighting, and the background is quite dark. His clothing is quite dark, um, and this helps sort of convey the darker aspect of this artist, the more emotional side, and this kind of relates to his backstory, which is highlighted in the article. Um, he nowhere is he's not represented as hyper masculine or a very confident sort of male dominant artist, which is in some ways breaking some conventions, because a sort of hyper masculine dominant male is quite a conventional thing for media texts, especially magazines. Um, but for alternative music magazines, it's more conventional to have a more emotional and less hyper masculine male featured. Um, there's within using the photos of FTL, there's lots of direct address, like for example in the cover image, the image used in the contents page, for the introduction, and these two photos. Uh, Lots of direct address, and this gives a more intimate feeling with the audience, and it helps draw in their attention more. And it definitely it represents him as more intimate, and yeah. So the tone of the magazine itself, for example, like within the article, um, it's very casual and it's quite laid back. And I believe this relates to the character, the artist himself, quite a lot. It represents his personality, which is quite laid back and quite informal, which would be quite conventional of a more alternative artist, and probably most artists in general. Um, Furthermore, I believe that the way I represented my feature artists in my magazine doesn't necessarily link to any demographic social group, and I mostly believe this due to the fact that the way he's photographed, the mise en scène is very simplistic. It doesn't really feature anything, as well as his costume doesn't hint to any specific kind of demographic social group, apart from the fact that of his earring that would possibly hint to a higher demographic social group, such as B, C to A possibly. Um, but my intention was to keep it very simplistic and not not link him to any specific social group, which could also help potentially appeal to a wider range of audiences, and also more effectively target my target audience of younger students who possibly wouldn't would be low on the demographic list of people.